First Church of the Holy Jackass.
The First Church of the Holy Jackass is not an actual religious institution that is legally recognized or subsidized with any taxpayer money. It is instead a one-person Setian religious art project and social initiative that is coordinated entirely by me, G.B. Marian, a priest of Set in the LV 426 tradition of Setianism. And I am here to offer a very different concept of religion than most people in the United States of America are familiar with. Dua Set, so mote it be. One issue I have always taken with Hermetic Kabbalah is the way in which it purports to blend Jewish mysticism, alchemy, Western astrology, and certain polytheistic religions. There is nothing wrong with blending different religious traditions together, of course, but Hermetic Kabbalists brand themselves as representing, quote-unquote, the original Kabbalah, which is absolutely false. True Kabbalah is not a free-for-all, but an intricate cosmology that is entirely unique to Judaism. It is also a closed practice that requires studying the Torah inside and out. Hermetic Kabbalah is simply a Gentile appropriation of this tradition that really has nothing to do with Judaism or the Torah, or with any of the polytheist gods that are commonly mentioned in Hermetic Kabbalic literature. For example, Kenneth Grant insisted that Set is linked to Thoth, the so-called 11th Sephirah on the Tree of Life. Other writers have linked Set with Gebirah, the sphere of divine judgment and wrath. These associations might appear to make sense on the surface, but I think many Jews and Setians would likely agree they are oversimplifications. Set is far more than just an emotive attribute of some monotheist god. He deserves to be understood on his own terms, not in Kabbalic or Hermetic Kabbalic terms. Set is not just the destructive murderer of Osiris that Hermetic Kabbalists like to pigeonhole him as being. He is also the son of Nut, the savior of Ra, the friend of the dead, and an ambassador for the Neteru to other pantheons. Yes, he can certainly hinder and destroy, but he can also help and protect, as evidenced by his own religious following in ancient times. He can become wrathful and go on the warpath, as he does with Osiris and Horus, but he can also be loving and romantic, as he is with each of his various partners. Hermetic Kabbalah is ill-equipped to comprehend or explain such a multifaceted polytheist divinity, since it is predicated on monotheism in the first place. By the same token, Setians, people who revere and emulate Set, are not the black magicians or devil worshippers of Egyptian polytheism. Most of us are regular people, just like everyone else in every other religion on earth. We work jobs, we pay our bills, we take care of our families, we value safety and consistency, we become upset when things go topsy-turvy, and many of us work as educators or even caregivers as well. So there is quite a bit more to Setians than whatever Hermetic Kabbalists might think about us. I decided to develop a new way of explaining the Setian wavelength with numbers and correspondences that does not appropriate anything from either Jewish Kabbalah or Hermetic Kabbalah. This meant doing away with the Tree of Life and using an entirely different visual model as my starting point, and it seemed to me that there is no better visual model for capturing the Setian experience than the Big Dipper, which the ancient Egyptians called Khepesh, or the thigh of Set. I first learned about Set's connection to the Big Dipper from reading The Gates of the Necronomicon by Simon, who is most likely Peter Lavenda writing under a pseudonym. The book recklessly equates Egyptian ideas with bits and pieces of Kabbalah, Taoism, and a Lovecraftian version of pseudo-Sumerian mythology, which actually owes more to August Derleth than to H.P. Lovecraft. Yet the parts about Set being associated with the Big Dipper are factual, at least, And I like the idea that these particular stars might correspond with certain astral gateways. Simon claims to be sharing information from a real Sumerian grimoire that doesn't actually exist, so it's important to understand I am not referring to his work as a credible resource here. Rather, his suggestions inspired me to think about how the stars in the Big Dipper might each relate to Set without needing to appropriate anything from any non-Kemetic or non-Egyptian mystical traditions. I sense that each of these stars corresponds with a different aspect of Set, a different phase in his myth cycle, and even a different aspect of what it is like to be a Setian. Assuming I am not completely crackers for thinking of the Big Dipper as a series of Setian gateways in the first place, I imagine these gates are accessible to us all at once, with Set reaching down to us through each of them at various times depending on his purpose. We may likewise reach up to him through each gate at various times for various purposes, and we already do so all the time without even realizing it. In the following segments, I will attempt to describe each of these gates, and I will provide a special incantation or key that may be used for opening each gate in turn. Alkaid, which in the original Arabic means the leader of the morning maidens, is the outermost star in the handle of the Big Dipper. I believe this star relates to Set's part in the ceremony of the opening of the mouth, in which the gods and the dead are invoked into their sacred images. In this way, Alkaid signifies how people create and sacralize art for the gods and the dead. If you have ever drawn a picture of Set and treated it as sacred, you have already participated in this process. The same principle can also apply to things that have nothing to do with Set on the surface. With sufficient imagination and intent, even a box of tampons can become a sacred talisman that keeps you mindful of the Red Lord. This can be especially helpful to Setians who live in situations where they cannot openly practice their faith. If you are unable to use an icon of Set in your home for fear that someone might smash it or perhaps even harm you, you could perhaps open the mouth of a favorite painting or photograph and use that in your dua or worship instead. The Alkaid Key invokes our power to draw down gods and other spirits into artistic forms, thereby transforming material objects into sacred talismans, imbuing them with spirit, and opening windows to other worlds.
In the name of SUTEKH, god of Deshret, I, a companion of Set in this sacred space, now stand before the Gate of ALKAID in Khepesh. I open the gate by channeling the gods through art. Thus inspired, I will stand beyond Alkaid with my prince in his desert, from whence he empowers me to bridge the gap between the worlds. Dua SUTEKH, so mote it be.
Mizar and ALCOR are named for the Arabic words for loincloth and orphan, and they are also called the horse and rider. They are the middle stars in the handle of the Big Dipper. I count them as one here because Alcor is so dim that most people in urban areas do not even know it is there, leading to the popular assumption that there are only 7 stars in the Big Dipper, when there are actually 8. If you go camping in the woods at night, and if your eyesight is sharp enough, you can actually see Alcor right beside Mizar. You just have to stare long enough to discern between them. Ancient hunters often used Alcor as a kind of vision test for this very reason. I think Mizar and Alcor best relate to Set's role as the savior and defender of Ra. In some accounts, the isfet serpent has a glare that can paralyze most of the gods with existential dread, but to which Set is completely impervious. He just stares that snake in the eye and remains unfazed. Every execration a Setian works to ward off negative energy in their life refers back to Mizar and Alcor, which relate to discernment and the ability to appreciate nuance. While fighting the isfet serpent in our day-to-day lives, Setians must always work to remember that things are seldom ever black or white. The Mizar and ALCOR Key invokes our power to pierce through illusions and to cut toxic energies and influences right out of our lives, striking terror in the uncreated enemy of all things itself.
In the name of SUTEKH, god of Deshret, I, an opener of the ways to Set, now stand before the gate of Mizar and ALCOR in Khepesh. I open the gate by discerning good from evil and dismantling falsehoods. Thus sharpened, I will stand beyond Mizar and ALCOR with my prince in his desert, from whence he charges me to spear the isfet serpent. Dua SUTEKH, so mote it be.
Alioth, which means the fat from the sheep's tail, is the innermost star on the handle of the Big Dipper, or the tail of the Great Bear. After he is reconciled with the rest of the Neteru or Egyptian gods, Set becomes an ambassador for the pantheon and forms alliances with various foreign divinities, including the Libyan god Ash, the Babylonian goddess Ishtar, and even the Hebrew god. His parallels in other faiths can take a wide variety of forms. Western occultists often identify him with the Christian Lucifer, but he also intersects with both Yahweh and Jesus Christ via the Greek magical papyri and the Alexamenos graffito, respectively. This speaks to the similarities Setians can share with all kinds of religions, as well as to how Set can reach us even when we have never read a single Egyptology book. The Alioth Key invokes our ability to engage with Set beyond native Egyptian traditions and to draw parallels between our faith and others, as well as to engage with other higher powers that were foreign to ancient Kemet and who are allied with Set.
In the name of SUTEKH, god of Deshret, I, a harbinger of Set's rage against isfet, now stand before the gate of Alioth in Khepesh. I open the gate by exploring the strange and befriending the stranger. Thus enlightened, I will stand beyond Alioth with my prince in his desert, from whence he brings me into syzygy with other gods. Dua SUTEKH, so mote it be.
Megrez, which means the insertion point of the bear's tail, is the star on the Great Bear's backside, forming the bowl of the Big Dipper. I believe this star is best associated with the contentious duality of Horus and Set. Their conflict and reconciliation manifests in how the days grow long, then short again, in the waxing and waning of the moon, and in the twists and turns of various human political tides. In this last context especially, I view Set as a progressive god who wants greater freedom and equality for marginalized people, an agenda that theocratic regimes and privileged elites have always found intolerable. The Megrez Key summons the power to influence and change the rest of society, to help turn the tides against aristocracy and tyranny, and to weaken the mighty and empower the frail.
In the name of SUTEKH, god of Deshret, I, an ambassador of Set to other faiths, now stand before the gate of Megrez in Khepesh. I open the gate with my reverence for king and country. Thus unbridled, I will stand beyond Megrez with my prince in his desert, from whence he instills his unruliness in me. Dua SUTEKH, so mote it be.
Phecta, which simply means the thigh, is the lowermost star on the handle side of the Big Dipper, or the hind leg of the Great Bear. This star refers to Set's role in the Osirian drama, in which he resembles a gardener trimming a rosebush. Trimming is disturbing and painful to the plant, but it also rejuvenates the plant and makes it bloom fresh roses. This speaks to experiencing a life-changing crisis, then processing and healing from that experience over time to become a healthier, stronger person. The unpleasant nature of this particular cycle is what leads most non-Setians to assume that Set is either chaotic or evil, and to be honest, even most Setians would probably prefer to avoid this gate, myself included. But Fekta is really not about chaos or evil. It is simply about bringing the regenerative powers of nature and the self into play, whether we like it or not. The Fekta Key invokes strength during times of extreme crisis or misfortune, and for processing the terrible things we can experience in our lives, so we can regenerate our spirits from injury.
In the name of SUTEKH, god of Deshret, I, a child of rebellion forged in fire, now stand before the gate of Fekta in Khepesh. I open the gate by transforming trauma into triumph. Thus resurrected, I will stand beyond Fekta with my prince in his desert, from whence he facilitates my ascent from darkness. Dua SUTEKH, so mote it be.
Merak, which means the loins, is the farthest of the two pointer stars residing in the Great Bear's genitals. This gate refers to being of Set, whether this means being an F5 tornado, a donkey, or even just a person with red hair. People, creatures, and things of Set are his manifestations in nature. By extension, Setians are not just his worshippers. We are also little Sets right here on Earth. We are neither slaves nor playthings to any deity, and we endeavor to love ourselves at least as much as we love our namesake. The Merak Key invokes the mystery of how Set is the Setian above and the Setian is Set below, and it speaks to why Set demands self-determination, not blind obedience.
In the name of SUTEKH, god of Deshret, I, a risen Osiris upon this earth, now stand before the gate of Merak in Khepesh. I open the gate by fulfilling myself and rejecting false austerity. Thus invigorated, I will stand beyond Merak with my prince in his desert, from whence he now manifests in nature through me. Dua SUTEKH, so mote it be.
And finally, Dub, which simply means the bear in Arabic, is the star that connects the Big Dipper to the constellation of Ursa Major, the Great Bear. It sits on the spine of the bear, and it is the closer of the two pointer stars that point to Polaris, the pole star. The second pointer star is Merak. You can use both Dub and Merak to draw an imaginary line to Polaris, the North Star, which is an ancient method for locating true north. For ancient Setians who lived out in the North African deserts, it must have seemed like the Dipper was always there to guide them as they traveled at night. For me, Dub is about the basic Setian attitude that autonomy and self-determination are inalienable rights for all people, regardless of race, sex, gender, sexual orientation, social class, religion, etc. It also relates to the imperishable ones, ancestral souls and spirits who have attained or been given Set's linear immortality in the afterlife, and who fight off isfet monsters with him beyond the northern sky. The Dub Key invokes the eternal deathlessness of Set, by which all sentient life is made autonomous, and by which his imperishable ones are made to stand on the other side of Khepesh after death.
In the name of SUTEKH, god of Deshret, I, the dazzling one made flesh, now stand before the gate of doom in Khepesh. I open the gate by owning myself and grovel into none. Thus immortalized, I will stand beyond doom with my prince in his desert, from whence he forever straightens my spine. Dua SUTEKH, so mote it be.